When people talk about The Godfather, they think of Marlon Brando, Francis Ford Coppola, Al Pacino, names that became legends. But before the movie was even filmed, before the cast was chosen, before the cameras rolled, there was a producer named Albert S Ruddy, and his fight to get the film made wasn't just about studio politics. It meant stepping into the crosshairs of real, organized crime figures who didn't want the story told. Ruddy wasn't born into Hollywood. He came from Montreal, studied architecture, and stumbled into show business almost by accident. By the late 1960s, he had made a name as a TV producer, working on the hit show Hogan's Heroes. But Ruddy wanted something bigger, something that would put him in the same breath as the giants of cinema. That opportunity came in the form of a novel by Mario Puzo called The Godfather. When Paramount bought the rights in 1969, the studio wasn't sure what to do with it. Mafia stories were risky. Audiences had seen gangster films before, but a sweeping 3-hour drama about the inner workings of the mob seemed like a gamble. Ruddy was the one who believed in it, fought for it, and saw the potential to make not just a movie, but the movie that could redefine an entire genre. The problem was that people outside Hollywood noticed too. Real mob figures in New York and Los Angeles were concerned about how they would be portrayed. In particular, many Italian-American community leaders argued that the novel reinforced negative stereotypes, painting Italians as criminals. The most outspoken critic was Joseph Colombo, the head of the Italian-American Civil Rights League, and also a man with deep ties to the Colombo crime family. Colombo's protests grew louder. The league staged rallies, pickets, and press campaigns. They threatened to shut the production down before it even started. Ruddy knew that unless he addressed these concerns, The Godfather might never make it to the screen. In a move few Hollywood producers would have dared, Ruddy agreed to meet with Colombo directly. He brought him the script. Colombo and his associates combed through it, looking for insults or stereotypes. Their main concern wasn't the violence or the story itself, it was the use of the word mafia. They felt it painted too broad a picture of Italian Americans. Ruddy listened and, in a pragmatic move, agreed to remove the word mafia entirely from the script. It was a single word, barely used at all, but for Colombo it was symbolic. With that change, he gave his approval. That meeting was more than a script edit. It was a truce. Ruddy had managed to negotiate peace with one of the most powerful mob families in America. To sweeten the deal, he also opened the door to giving a few league members background work as extras in the film. For the mob, it was a way to keep an eye on production. For Ruddy, it was insurance. From then on, The Godfather could move forward, but the shadow of the mob never disappeared. On set in New York, stories circulated that real gangsters came by to watch filming. Some even gave advice on how characters should talk, how they should dress, how they should hold a gun. The production blurred the line between fact and fiction. Ruddy's gamble paid off. When The Godfather was released in 1972, it became a phenomenon. It was critically acclaimed, a box office smash, and it won 3 Academy Awards, including Best Picture for Ruddy. The film not only redefined gangster movies, it redefined American cinema itself. But Ruddy's involvement with real mob figures was never forgotten. His deal with Colombo was controversial, both inside and outside the studio. Some saw it as brilliant pragmatism. He had saved the movie. Others saw it as dangerous, a Hollywood producer cutting deals with criminals. It was a reminder of how closely art and reality brushed against each other in that moment. The irony is that Ruddy himself wasn't a mobster, wasn't even particularly tied to crime. He was a producer doing what producers do, solving problems, smoothing obstacles, and getting the movie made. But the fact that he had to deal with Colombo at all shows the power organized crime still held over certain industries, including Hollywood. Colombo himself didn't live to see the movie's release. In 1971, while speaking at a rally in New York, he was shot and critically injured, later dying from his wounds. Many speculated that his activism around The Godfather had drawn unwanted attention from rival mobsters. Ruddy's deal with him, however, remained intact. The production was allowed to finish, and the film went on to become legendary. For Ruddy, The Godfather was the crown jewel of his career. He later worked on films like The Longest Yard and $1 Million Baby, both successes, but nothing would ever match the cultural impact of The Godfather. In interviews, Ruddy was frank about his experience. He admitted that working with Columbo and the League wasn't exactly in the Hollywood playbook, but he said it was necessary. Without it, the movie might never have happened. The legacy of that moment continues to ripple. The Godfather remains a masterpiece, studied in film schools and loved by audiences around the world. But it's also a reminder that Hollywood doesn't exist in a bubble. Behind the glitz of the Oscars and the glamour of premieres, real-world power struggles often shape what gets made, how it's made, and who gets to tell the story. Ruddy's story shows that sometimes making a movie means stepping into dangerous territory, negotiating with people who don't play by studio rules, who don't answer to the same authorities. For The Godfather, that meant balancing art with survival, fiction with reality. It's why the film feels so authentic, so lived in, because in some ways, it was. In the end, Albert S. Ruddy will always be remembered as the man who got The Godfather made. He wasn't the director. That was Francis Ford Coppola. He wasn't the writer. That was Mario Puzo. But without Ruddy's ability to manage both Hollywood executives and real mob bosses, the film that many call the greatest of all time might never have made it past the first draft. And that's the lasting truth of this story. Sometimes the real drama isn't on the screen. Sometimes it's behind the curtain, where producers shake hands in quiet meetings, agree to edits that seem small but mean everything, and make sure that the show goes on, no matter who's watching.